All right, it is 3 o'clock, and we are going to get started shortly, but as people are still logging in, we're going to give them a couple more minutes. So just bear with us for a few more minutes, and then we'll get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. And we'll start with Ethan Handelman, VP of Policy and Advocacy for the National Housing Conference.
Thanks, Rebecca. Welcome, folks. I see we have about 150 people logged in. I know that more will be trickling in as the webinar proceeds, but you here are on time, so you get to hear all the good stuff. Welcome to this discussion. I'm really pleased that NHC and the Green Affordable Housing Coalition can host this webinar because it's really important for affordable housing folks to pay attention to the Clean Power Plan and what's happening in every state. This is one of those instances where we can tell you early what's going on and help you get ways to get involved, as opposed to the, hey, the bill's on the floor right now, send a message, make a call. This is very much a grassroots engagement opportunity. For those of you who aren't familiar with National Housing Conference, there's a slide that gives a little history about us. We'll just say we are the country's oldest housing advocacy organization. We've been around more than 83 years, and in that time focused in a very broad-based way on safe, decent, and affordable housing for everyone. Our members are for-profit and non-profit, public sector and private sector, really all over the map throughout the country, and all focused on this core idea. I would say if you want to learn more, you should check out our website, but I will give you a little more background on Green Affordable Housing Coalition, which we run along with two other steering committee members, Enterprise Community Partners and the U.S. Green Building Council, who are very strong allies in all of this work. We're a national action network. Our goal is to foster collaboration and advocate, when appropriate, for development and preservation of green affordable housing. We meet quarterly, mostly by conference call, but also here in person in DC, and invite all of you to participate. The best way to get involved, just check out the website address that's on your screen. It'll take you to a way to register. The emails will, I believe, go to Rebecca, and you can join in. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow afternoon. If folks are interested, shoot a message out today. We'll send you login information. It's free. It's a great way to learn more. There's a bunch of good presentations, including Mara Blitzer from HUD, talking about some new initiatives. So I highly encourage you to get involved. So with that, let me give you a quick overview of the discussion today, and then I'll introduce our speakers. We were already in the introduction, don't need to talk about that, but we will begin with an overview of the Clean Power Plan, a federal initiative to reduce CO2 emissions, and then talk about how that connects to multifamily affordable housing. The idea, in very brief, and you'll get more detail about that as we proceed, is in each state there will be opportunities to use energy efficiency at the multifamily property level to help satisfy their targets for reducing CO2, which means they can cost-effectively fund improvements at the property level to help hit their goals. So it's a win-win, right? More affordable housing, developed or preserved, and reduction in emissions with all the concomitant benefits that come with that. The purpose of the webinar is to help you understand the context around that, both at the federal level and the state level, and help you understand the actors involved, the different folks at the state level, people who can be your allies, people you can help out and talk to and help make sure that affordable housing is a major part of what happens at the state level. We'll have 4 presenters who I'll tell you about in just a second. They will have a little bit of discussion after they talk. We'll talk about some next steps you can take, and we're aiming to leave a lot of time for Q&A. Couple technical details. You're going to get a link to the slides and a link to the recording of this webinar that will come to you afterwards. Probably in the next couple days. It goes out through the webinar system. If you want to ask questions during, the way to do that is with the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. It's part of the GoToWebinar module. If you need help, there's a link to Help menu. You can also ask questions in the chat box, and one of us will do our best to answer those as we go. But it's fine to ask questions early on. We'll get to them when we get to the Q&A period, but do recognize that a whole lot of questions will get answered through the initial presentation. So give that just a moment. Let me tell you about our 4 speakers because I think you will want to hear from all of them. First up will be Khalil Shahid. He's a project manager in the Urban Solutions Program at the Natural Resources Defense Council. After him will be Todd Nedwick, who is the Housing and Energy Efficiency Policy Director at National Housing Trust. He will pass the baton to Lauren Ross, who is a Senior Policy Analyst for Utilities, State and Local Policy at ACEEE, the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. And lastly, Sandy Fazeli, the Program Director with National Association of State Energy Officials, NASEO, will finish up. At that point, we'll hand it over to Rebecca King here at NHC, who will lead the discussion, and then everyone will help answer your questions. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Khalil, who I believe is on the line with us. Are you there, Khalil?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can. It is all yours.
Okay.
Just a second for Todd to pull up your slide.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining with us. So as Ethan said, my name is Khalil Shahid. I'm a project manager with the Urban Solutions Program here at the Natural Resources Defense Council. And so Todd and I are going to tag team on our proposal. I'm going to start off, and then as Ethan said, I'll kick it off to Todd. And so the part that I'm going to cover is just a brief intro overview of the Clean Power Plan, and then Todd is going to get into some of the opportunities and what's at stake really for the affordable multifamily housing sector. So next slide. And just a brief bit of background about how we came into this work together as partners. NRDC, along with the National Housing Trust, are partners with Elevate Energy, formerly CNT Energy out of Chicago, and the Energy Foundation in a project that we call the Energy Efficiency for All project. We're working in 12 states across the country to increase the share of revenue of investment coming from utilities towards the affordable multifamily housing sector for energy efficiency retrofits. And so we're working in these 12 states with local partners to build local and also national networks, amongst traditional energy efficiency advocates with the affordable housing community, supporting these local organizations or these local networks of partners to advocate for improved efficiency programs and increased funding by utilities. Next slide, Todd. And so we began this work really through internal discussions last year, just looking at the EPA's proposal, the Clean Power Plan as it's now known, to reduce our national carbon emissions by about 26% below our 2005 baseline by 2020 and 30% by 2030. And as you see here on the slide, just a little bit about, the benefits of clean power, both in terms of, its economic benefits, the benefits to the reliability for the energy grid, but most importantly, the actual climate and health benefits of transitioning away from fossil fuel energy to more energy efficiency and renewables. Next slide. And so the proposal, the Clean Power Plan proposal, has two main elements. One is that it gives states the authority to create CO2 emission reductions plans based on the goal structure that was created by the EPA. It does not predetermine what states need to do, but gives them guidelines in terms of and a mix of policy options for achieving that target. The EPA sets state-specific CO2 targets, but again, it doesn't tell them how to get there. Next slide. And so the Clean Power Plan gives states a tool of essentially 4 options to meet its emissions targets. The first is making existing coal plants more efficient. The second is using existing gas plants more effectively, and so essentially reducing emissions from coal plants by shifting to cleaner burning gas plants, or shifting altogether from fossil fuels to increasing the use of renewable energy, which includes nuclear, for electricity generation, or increasing the use of energy efficiency. And so states really have the option of using one or the other, or really mixing amongst these 4 options to meet its reduction target. Next slide. And so I'm going to focus here on the energy efficiency. So as you can imagine, when the EPA released its initial proposed rule, it gave an estimate of how much of the savings or how much of the targeted CO2 reductions states could reach through energy efficiency. It assumes that states will ramp up or increase its energy efficiency potential by 0.2% a year. It assumes that there are going to be high costs associated, with the ramping up or the increase of those programs, and so it really underestimates the reductions that are achievable. It underestimates the cost effectiveness of those programs, and it really underestimates, the potential for reduced energy consumption through energy efficiency, which is both a positive and a negative in the sense that, it promises very little, but then it gives us the opportunity to really show how much greater the potential actually is. Next slide. And so states will likely choose between one of 2 models of carbon reduction strategy, either a rate-based target model or a mass-based target model. And so the reason why that's important, under the rate-based plan, essentially what will happen is utilities will increase through the incentives that are created through the Clean Power Plan. Utilities will increase their direct investment in energy efficiency programs and would then be credited for the energy and cost savings achieved through those programs. Under the mass-based target, there would be an auctioning of carbon reduction allowances through which revenue would be generated either at the state or through a regional trading system, and a portion of that revenue could then be set aside for direct investment for energy efficiency or for other needs. One of the best I guess functioning models of this system now is the California model, where I believe it was about $45 million has been set aside for direct investment in low-income communities for infrastructure, jobs, for energy efficiency, and a number of other goals. And so the rate-based model is much more akin to what we are developing under the Energy Efficiency for All work, where we're working directly with utilities to increase investments and to improve program accessibility for the affordable multifamily housing sector. Whereas the mass-based target, again, it's just a set-aside of funds that can be then diverted or invested directly into low-income communities, including for retrofitting affordable housing. And so the key here is that it's important to understand, what strategy is going to be proposed in each state, so that our partners can take the appropriate advocacy strategy in that state. Because ultimately, while the Clean Power Plan, creates this incentive, it creates the opportunity. Those of us who have any experience working, with and in support of low-income communities, we know that, whether it's, federal, state, or local, policy initiatives, that, unless there is some, direct advocacy, unless there's great and deliberate effort in place, the benefits of these types of policies rarely ever just, materialize in and of themselves, for low-income communities. And so it's up to us to really work to make sure that the benefits of the Clean Power Plan are actually put in place in such a way that they actually reach and are distributed, to low-income communities. And that includes affordable housing. Next slide. And so what's happened in the next steps? As you all know, the plan was released actually almost a year out from now, June of 2014. December 1st was the deadline for the initial comments. And our group, working with, again, through NHT and with partners, submitted comments, by that December 1st deadline in support of energy efficiency for affordable multifamily housing. And now we're coming into the final stretch where we are anticipating the final rule to be released sometime July, perhaps as late as August, which will then sort of kick off the timeline for when states will begin to get together and to draft their state implementation plans. And so what's going to happen between now and then is, again, the releasing of the rule. And so what we are preparing for now is to get our local partners, to get, affordable housing groups, engaged and up to speed and ready to really, push and drive energy efficiency gains through the state implementation plan processes. Next slide. And so, Todd, this is where you're going to take over.
That's right. Thanks, Khalil. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the specific connection between the Clean Power Plan and affordable multifamily housing as we see it. Earlier in the webinar, Ethan clearly laid out the potential opportunity for investment in multifamily affordable housing. There's clearly an opportunity to drive energy efficiency investments in affordable multifamily housing, which will not only reduce carbon emissions, but will also benefit low-income renters and help to preserve affordable housing by lowering operating costs. However, to realize this opportunity, states will have to make energy efficiency investments a clear priority in their state implementation plans. As was mentioned earlier, EPA has provided states some flexibility in terms of how the states go about the path that they choose to meet their carbon emission reduction target set by EPA. So states have a year to develop a state implementation plan once the final rule is published, which, as Khalil indicated, should be mid-summer. It is, however, fair to say that a lot of states are already in the process of thinking about putting their plan together. So I think folks realize that this is going to happen and that they need to start thinking about it. For those of us who want to see more investment in affordable multifamily housing, we think it's very important to engage those who are responsible, those who are overseeing putting together these state implementation plans, which typically are the State Department of Environment and the State Clean Air Agency, so that we can make the case for more investment in multifamily energy efficiency. Unfortunately, EPA has reminded us just recently that they are sending a clear signal to the states that the implementation plans should not be developed in a vacuum, but should include significant community engagement and outreach to key stakeholders. And so it's very important that as that process unfolds, that housing finance agencies, affordable housing advocates, owners, developers, that we all become involved in those stakeholder processes to ensure that affordable multifamily housing is part of the solution. I think that there's a very compelling case for why affordable multifamily housing should be a key component of these state implementation plans. On average, it's no surprise that multifamily housing is older than single-family housing and has less efficient heating, cooling, plumbing, lighting systems. And despite consisting of 25% of the housing units in the U.S. and comprising 20% of energy consumed by all housing units, multifamily has been greatly overlooked by the existing energy efficiency programs. Utilities spend about $7 to $8 billion per year on energy efficiency programs, only a minority of that amount, only a minority of utilities, and a very small amount of that funding is dedicated to multifamily energy efficiency. This chart here kind of illustrates the gap. The blue lines, the blue bars represent multifamily share of utility spending on residential energy efficiency, whereas the yellow bar represents the multifamily share of the housing market. You can see multifamily housing in all of these markets that are shown here are not receiving an amount of utility investment that's equivalent to their share of the housing market. So given the age of the housing stock, the fact that the multifamily housing is underserved, there's significant untapped energy savings potential here that can be contribute to the Clean Power Plan goals. In fact, in order to really help make the case as to the significant amount of untapped energy savings potential in affordable multifamily housing, the EEFA project just today, in fact, very exciting, released a new study called Potential for Energy Savings, which documents the significant economic and energy savings that could come from making affordable multifamily housing more energy efficient. We can think it's a pretty groundbreaking study in the sense that it really dives deeply into looking at the affordable multifamily housing sector specifically and what the energy savings potential is there. And so based on the data that we gathered from a sample of states, we focused on 8 states in particular. We estimate that energy efficiency programs in multifamily affordable housing could cut electricity usage by as much as 32% and natural gas by as much as 24% over the next 20 years across the 8 states studied. And we also, the data also demonstrates how cost-effective these types of investments will be. The report estimates that the return on investments made in energy efficiency would range from $2.90 to $3.50 for every dollar invested in improvements. And that comes to a total net benefit in those 8 states of $21 billion. And as I mentioned, we just today released our Potential for Energy Savings report. It's on the EEFA website. I'm going to attempt to navigate to it just to give you guys a sense of what's there. So this is the Energy Efficiency for All website. Potential for Energy Savings report is posted here along with fact sheets that are state-specific for each of the 8 states that we studied. So I would encourage you to visit the website to see what the findings are about the energy savings potential in affordable multifamily housing. So that data speaks to the energy efficiency savings potential, but we also need to translate that into carbon emissions because the CPP rule obviously is focused on carbon emissions reduction. And that's something that we're now focusing on, translating energy savings into carbon emissions, to further provide evidence that it really does make sense for affordable multifamily housing to be a critical part of the solution. And the preliminary data confirms that the carbon emission savings potential that can be achieved via cost-effective, achievable energy efficiency programs is pretty significant. For example, in New York and Maryland, investments in affordable multifamily housing could achieve as much as 10 to 11% of those states' required carbon emissions reduction requirements under the CPP rule. So I just wanted to end by providing a little bit more context and perspective by kind of just highlighting some examples of existing greenhouse gas reduction programs that have predated the Clean Power Plan. Cleo mentioned the California Cap-and-Trade program, which has resulted in about $37.5 million of investment in funding for low-income multifamily weatherization. And I'm sure folks are also familiar with the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI, which has resulted in $620 million invested in energy efficiency across the participating states. And a number of the states have devoted significant amounts of their energy efficiency funding to multifamily affordable housing. So these are just two examples of potential models that other states might follow, and as you can see, they've resulted in significant funding opportunities for energy efficiency investments in affordable housing. And with that, I will pass it over to Lauren.
Great, thank you. And thank you to the National Housing Conference for the invitation to participate on today's webinar. And thanks again, Khalil and Todd, for that excellent overview. Sandy and I are now going to cover ways in which you, the audience, affordable housing community, can leverage and mobilize utilities, state-level agencies, and other partners to work together and scale up energy efficiency investments in multifamily housing, particularly in light of the Clean Power Plan. So just a quick overview of ACEEE for those of you who are not familiar. We are a nonprofit research organization dedicated to advancing energy efficiency. We work on energy efficiency across sectors, including buildings, the economy, behavior, as well as developing policy at the local, state, and federal levels. In addition to publishing our research, we host several conferences each year. For those of you in the San Francisco area, we have an upcoming conference on energy efficiency finance called our Finance Forum, which will be held in San Francisco in the first week of June. And now a little bit about ACEEE's multifamily related work, which has increased a lot in the last few years. We're currently engaged in a multi-year project to develop and improve utility-sponsored energy efficiency programs for multifamily buildings. We provide research and technical assistance to utilities to create or improve their multifamily programs. We also convene a utility working group, which consists of multifamily program administrators, to encourage peer discussion and also best practices for overcoming challenges in this sector. Many of the insights I provide today are a product of working with this group, and in particular closely with utilities. I'd also encourage you to visit our website to see a series of reports we've published in the past years, several of which I will be referencing in my presentation. I'd also like to draw your attention to our recent report on financing for energy efficiency in multifamily buildings, and an upcoming report on the multiple benefits of energy efficiency for multifamily building owners and residents. And then lastly, throughout this year, we'll be releasing resources to help states and supporters like yourselves ensure that multifamily energy efficiency investments, those sponsored by utilities and those not sponsored by utilities, so that they can be credited in state compliance plans for the Clean Power Plan. So stay tuned for that, and certainly check out our website for more resources. So before I get into some of the actionable items under the Clean Power Plan, particularly for this audience, I want to highlight the importance of ratepayer or utility-sponsored programs that specifically serve multifamily buildings. These are programs that are funded through utilities specifically for multifamily customers. These aren't just residential or commercial programs which multifamily buildings may be eligible for, but those that are particularly created for multifamily buildings, both owners and tenants. In 2013, ACEEE mapped utility-led multifamily programs in the U.S., and we found that multifamily programs are often overlooked in major metro areas. In fact, 40% of the largest multifamily housing markets are not served by energy efficiency programs. And as Khalil and Todd already pointed out, we also found that spending in the case where a multifamily program did exist was typically far below the proportion of multifamily customers in that given area. So why is this problematic? Because we and others on this panel believe that utility-sponsored programs are a significant source of investment in energy efficiency, specifically for the multifamily sector. We also know that successful multifamily retrofit programs can help to overcome traditional barriers that hinder energy efficiency in this sector. For example, many of you are aware of the split incentive that exists between owners and tenants. Owners have less incentive to improve the efficiency of their buildings if they are not benefiting from lower costs. But in most cases, building owners are paying utilities, for example, for electricity to like common areas and outdoor areas and central hot water systems. And this barrier can be overcome with targeted incentives. Successful programs can also provide technical assistance to help owners navigate the retrofit process, from obtaining and understanding an energy audit, applying for incentives and financing, could be developing a scope of work and ensuring that the work is completed correctly. And additionally, successful programs can also provide or help owners apply for available financial incentives or financing, and can connect and even in some cases train qualified contractors to do the work. So overall, there is some good news, and that is that there does exist a variety of utility customer-funded programs targeting the multifamily sector, ranging from no-cost direct install programs to comprehensive whole building retrofit services. We need to build on these successes and best practices. We think that there is much room to improve, both to create new programs in areas where multifamily buildings are but not being targeted, and to scale up existing programs to achieve greater savings. And to reiterate, designing energy efficiency programs to specifically target multifamily buildings is important because, as you all know, there's several unique barriers that building owners face when considering whether or not to invest in energy efficiency. So the question remains, why should you act under the Clean Power Plan, and what can you do? First, I think is understanding the value to you all as a community, specifically capturing energy efficiency investments for affordable multifamily buildings in state compliance plans. What can it lead to? Well, we think it can lead to additional financial support for utility-led multifamily programs, can create permanence for programs, can improve existing programs by increasing rigor and oversight. We also think that it could generate momentum for new projects and programs, and it is certainly a unique opportunity to link multifamily energy efficiency to broader state goals such as affordable housing, economic development, public health, job creation, and other environmental issues. And again, building off what Todd and Khalil mentioned earlier, it's important that you all have a seat at the table during stakeholder engagement and ensure that multifamily efficiency, ratepayer funded or not, I focused on ratepayer funded multifamily program efficiency. Sandy will focus on non-ratepayer funded. But the idea here is that end-use energy efficiency in affordable buildings is that it is included in state implementation plans under the Clean Power Plan. Where traditionally our key audience for advocating for more investment in utility multifamily programs, where traditionally our audience had been utilities and those that influence them, other state level actors, there's other state level actors we must engage with now, and I think as Todd mentioned, that's the Department of the Environment at the state level, air regulators, they must also be engaged around this topics. And some of the questions we should be asking as we approach these state level actors here, I provide a brief list which I think could get us thinking about this and create some strong action at the state level, is what energy efficiency policies and programs have already been adopted in your areas that serve the multifamily sector. What are the details of those policies, implementation, stringency, financial commitments? Is there any information on the energy impacts, projected or historical data? Which organization or agency monitors and evaluates the energy impacts of those policies? And what funding sources do the energy efficiency policies and programs depend upon? And again, this is all related as it applies to multifamily. And then one last note before I turn it over to Sandy, I want to remind you all that local partnerships are important for advocating around the Clean Power Plan, and even more generally for just developing multifamily specific programs. And these partnerships could include connecting the affordable housing community with electric, gas, and water utilities, contractors, housing advocates, intermediaries like enterprise or LISC, and financial institutions and housing finance agencies. Again, Sandy will talk a little bit more about some of the other state level actors you might want to engage with, but we think that these partners will help provide an understanding of the unique characteristics of the local multifamily market and in creating a broader coalition to advocate for multifamily energy efficiency and state compliance plans. We're going to shift over to Sandy. I'm going to pull up her presentation.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, Lauren, for the introduction on some of the action items that this group might want to consider. And I'd also like to thank NHC for the opportunity to speak to you all today. I think a very important message that we just heard from Lauren is that utility stakeholders and ratepayer-funded programs are a key piece of the puzzle when it comes to advancing affordable housing energy efficiency as a compliance option under the Clean Power Plan. What I'll be discussing today is another major piece of the puzzle, in particular efforts in energy efficiency that are being driven outside of the investor-owned utility sphere. So I'll be sharing some perspectives that we've seen among NASEO's members, the state energy offices, and the state, private, and NGO partners they've been working with on Clean Power Plan issues. First off, a few quick words about NASEO. We're a national nonprofit association representing the governor-designated energy officials from each state and territory. These offices run billions of dollars in programs annually in a variety of different areas, ranging from energy emergency preparedness and resiliency to energy production and distribution and end-use energy efficiency. I'm a program director here at NASEO. I lead NASEO's efforts to be a resource for and about the states on a few key issues, including energy efficiency and affordable multifamily buildings, clean energy financing, and transportation issues. For the past few years, we've been partnering with the Energy Foundation to promote peer-to-peer sharing on state policies and programs that can boost the market for energy efficiency and affordable housing. We've had the pleasure of working with groups like ACEEE, NHT, and NRDC on this issue, and we're really excited to see NHC's network grabbing a seat at the table to make a more direct link between the affordable housing market, energy efficiency, and the Clean Power Plan, which has all sorts of complications and constraints around it, and is still somewhat up in the air as we await the proposed rule. Before I get into the specifics of what NASEO has been doing on the Clean Power Plan, I wanted to posit some ideas that I've had on what the possibilities are for the affordable housing community. And my hope is that during the discussion afterwards, we can hear directly from you on your suggested paths or better paths on how we move this forward. So as I've mentioned, privately delivered state and locally supported programs offer a good starting point for the affordable housing community to consider how energy efficiency in your marketplace can play a role in state Clean Power Plan compliance efforts. We've done some back-of-the-envelope calculations to estimate what the market size for energy efficiency is in what we call the non-ratepayer arena. We found that it offers similar, if not more, potential as utility-sponsored demand-side management programs. So an equally significant opportunity that I think is certainly called for consideration. On the slide, I've listed some places where this non-utility investment is coming from. The Energy Services Company, or ESCO market, which is largely focused on energy savings performance contracting for public buildings, brings billions of dollars in efficiency to the market every year. State and local financing programs and incentives offer and leverage billions of dollars more. Programs here include clean energy revolving loan funds, credit enhancements, and other mechanisms such as the Warehouse for Energy Efficiency Loans, bond financing, property assessed clean energy, and other programs supported by state, local, and private dollars. And federal investment certainly factors into the equation from agencies like HUD, the Department of Energy, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, to name a few. At the end of the day, what is important to consider is that in many states, for the folks who are leading the charge on 111D compliance plans, energy efficiency is not necessarily a point of expertise. Efforts need to be focused on increasing confidence that energy efficiency projects will help the state achieve its compliance targets. This needs to happen in an easy to understand, credible, real, and dependable way. So the way I see it, not only for affordable housing, but for energy efficiency advocates in general, it's very much about designing your conversations and projects and programs in such a way as to enable the state to capture the value that you're bringing to the energy efficiency world. The challenge here is that approaches will vary at the state level, of course, and the planning and stakeholder processes that are underway or will be underway are fairly unique to the state in which they're taking place. But in the next few slides, I'll be talking about some of the work that we've been doing with partners on behalf of the states at the national level to facilitate these conversations and increase general understanding of energy efficiency as a compliance option in the Clean Power Plan. So on our approach, NASEO has not taken a position on whether the proposed rule should move forward. However, we are working to ensure states have maximum flexibility under the rule, and we are strongly promoting interagency and interstate discussions among energy offices, utility commissions, and air agencies. Some themes that we are pushing include energy system reliability, as well as compliance flexibility for states, permitting the use of both state-overseen utility ratepayer efficiency programs and public and private non-ratepayer projects, policies, and programs. And so while this is fairly straightforward, our approach has been the result of an iterative process working not only with the state energy offices, but also with the National Association of Clean Air Agencies, NACA, and the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, NARUC, on this issue. And we drafted a joint set of principles that we have shared with EPA on the use of energy efficiency as a compliance measure under the Clean Power Plan. And the cover letter and link to download the principles are included on the slide. And we've lovingly come to call these conversations among NASEO, NARUC, and NACA the 3N discussions. But in fact, these discussions have involved many more partners than just the 3Ns. We have been working with several groups, including ACEEE, the Regulatory Assistance Project, the American Public Power Association, and others on this issue. And several partners are currently helping us develop and disseminate case studies and regulatory sample language for a few of the major non-ratepayer compliance approaches in the market. Some I've already mentioned, like performance contracting. Other case studies will touch on combined heat and power, industrial efficiency, and building energy codes. We've also partnered with the Climate Registry and a group of states to propose the establishment of a National Energy Efficiency Registry. This type of registry would create transparency and streamlined accounting for energy efficiency project data. It would support not only 111D compliance by avoiding double counting or supporting streamlined accounting, but it would also generally support statewide energy planning and energy efficiency targets that are crucially important to the affordable housing sector. And finally, we've been convening the states around the Clean Power Plan. Towards the right, you'll see a couple of pictures. One is of EPA Administrator McCarthy at our 2014 annual meeting. The one on the bottom is actually a panel session that included a couple of states, Georgia and Virginia, as well as energy services companies, ESCOs, Johnson Controls, and Siemens on private and state-driven efforts on efficiency and how they fit into a 111D framework. The question of enforceability, I think, really highlights the breadth and depth of stakeholders that are involved in state planning around the Clean Power Plan. State compliance plans must identify the entities responsible for compliance and other obligations. These entities could include power plant owners, distribution utilities, third-party program administrators, and state agencies and authorities. The plans must also include mechanisms for showing compliance and how the obligations are being met, and conversely, they must also show legal mechanisms to address non-compliance. And as Khalil and Todd elaborated, there are various different factors that affect the state compliance plan, and thus the type of advocacy that might need to go into promoting a certain sector within that plan. And some of those factors include decisions around the mass versus rate-based approach, EM&V, evaluation, measurement, and verification processes required to assess projects, the utility structures in the state, the prevalence or lack thereof of non-ratepayer programs and the oversight, underwriting, and rigor attached to those programs, and whether the state is collaborating on a joint or common elements plan, and then also interstate trade and questions of crediting certain types of programs that might affect in other states' ability to comply with the Clean Power Plan. So what might all this mean for the affordable housing community? I think there are a few key opportunities and actions that could help build the case for state compliance plans either to acknowledge affordable housing as an important piece of their approach, or at the very least for these plans to avoid discounting the efficiency potential in affordable housing because of issues such as high first cost, lack of current utility programming in this market segment, or other potential barriers that might be associated with affordable housing energy efficiency. So in light of that, I think information, education, and usable data become crucially important. So first, especially in states where there is lackluster utility action on energy efficiency for low-income residents and tenants, I'd suggest looking to see if there are opportunities to take advantage of non-utility programs such as state, local, or private programs. Use these to build a track record for pilots and projects in your sector, see what types of trends, processes, and data you can pull. I think it's important to maintain a grasp of where the investment for your projects is coming from. The way the energy savings are captured and tracked in a state's compliance plan may differ based on whether it's seeded through a utility program, as Lauren mentioned, or through private, state, or local investment. And importantly, the methodologies for tracking and calculating the emission savings may also differ among these different approaches. Second, I think it's crucially important to educate state agencies on the type of work you're doing, the scale of it, and its potential impact on air quality emissions. I would suggest preparing rigorous, credible cases that your project's energy savings and resulting emissions avoidances are credible, dependable, and can meet the enforceability criteria of being quantifiable and verifiable, which is no small order, but we do know that the data is out there and just needs to be presented in such a way that planners can understand and use. And third, as Ethan and many others on the webinar have said, stay informed on the planning process in your own state. I think when the rule is finalized, we at NASEO are expecting that some of the energy offices may use their experience in planning and policy development to act as a hub for stakeholder discussions and convenings. So I think it's important to use this time to become a relevant stakeholder so the states don't miss an opportunity to capture the value you're bringing to the market. Yep, and thank you all for your time, and looking forward to discussion and questions.
And a big thanks to all of our and we will send them around. So Rebecca, let me turn it over to you for some opening questions for our panelists.
Thanks, Ethan. I also have lots of questions. This has been great. So I hope it's also been useful for all of you on the webinar. But I kind of want to go to have each presenter give your thoughts, kind of summarizing from your presentations about the potential for new investment for multifamily energy efficiency, because it was touched on in every presentation, but you're all working on this because it was exciting and kind of groundbreaking. It is groundbreaking. So for you, what are you seeing as the big potential for multifamily? And we'll start with Khalil and put him on the spot.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I couldn't quite hear you.
Can you kind of talk about what you see as the potential for new investment for multifamily energy efficiency because of the Clean Power Plan?
Sure. Yeah, there is a great potential. I think you have to look at it two ways. One, there are many states that we know, unfortunately, at least in their current posture, are not going to develop their own state implementation plan. I think overall, energy efficiency has proven to be the least cost and most cost-effective means of reducing carbon emissions, reducing energy consumption on aggregate. So I think that this is going to be a key option that states are going to look to try to meet those targets. But just stepping back again, as we said, some states are at least in posturing are not going to do it. And for those that actually, such as Oklahoma, that actually, passed an executive order barring the state from actually developing a SIP, the federal implementation plan is going to come into effect. And so either way, whether it's through a SIP or whether it's through the federal implementation plan, there will be more incentive, for utilities to invest in energy efficiency to get these credits. The key for us is to make sure that the new investments in energy efficiency generated by the Clean Power Plan don't all accrue to the industrial and to the commercial sectors, because it's seen as more cost-effective to do so, but that the benefits are actually spread widely. And this is an opportunity for the affordable housing community to really, set its stake in the ground and say, the residential sector as a whole represents 21%, of our national carbon emissions, and we deserve, a fair share of that investment as well.
Thanks. That's a great point. Todd, anything you want to add, elaborate on?
Yeah, just that, I think, we've seen over the last couple of years or so a lot of new activity among utilities when it comes to multifamily energy efficiency programs because of, the work of a lot of the organizations that are on this call and others. And so I think we're seeing some pretty good models of very successful programs that will help us in making the case for including multifamily affordable housing in these implementation plans. I do think that it's on us, it's on those of us that really are interested in seeing affordable housing more energy efficient and preserving affordable housing. It's on us to really make sure that we are engaging, at a very grassroots level to impact these plans as they're being developed. And if we do that, I think the potential is pretty significant.
Thanks. So now we'll shift back to the room and have Lauren go. Thoughts to share?
Great. I'll be brief. And I think both Khalil and Todd just highlighted what we see as the opportunity for making sure that utility investment in energy efficiency incorporates multifamily customers. So I think that we should use the Clean Power Plan as an additional opportunity to highlight the untapped potential in the sector and make sure that ratepayer funds get delivered to these buildings. But then I'd also go back to a point that I made earlier, and that's that I think that this legislation is a very important opportunity for collaboration among local and state level actors that don't normally engage. And as I mentioned some of the state levels earlier, but I think multifamily efficiency is one of those cross-cutting issues that seeks to not only lower utility bills for the residents, but better living conditions, healthier housing, job creation, local economic development. These are in this way, it's a cross-cutting issue and can bring together groups to form a much broader coalition. And I think this is a unique opportunity that shouldn't be lost.
And we'll close with Sandy on this question.
Thanks. Yeah, I would completely second what Lauren just mentioned. I think in addition to the many other benefits that efficiency and affordable housing offers in terms of economic development, public health, environmental improvements, being able to say that this great package of projects also helps the state look good in their 111D compliance is a great hook, and it's something that can be used in advocacy to increase investment on that. I also think that, from our perspective, we've seen a lot of states interested in this idea around a registry or some sort of kind of transparent accounting to better track some of the energy efficiency projects and data that are out there. So to the extent that some sort of coordination occurs among the states on this issue to really highlight successful projects and programs, that could definitely help increase momentum behind the sector.
Thank you. So I will pause on all my questions, and we will shift to audience questions, which Ethan is going to moderate for us.
We have a bunch of good ones. So thank you all for diving in here. I'm going to do my best to summarize and connect some of these so that we hit as much as possible, so give me a little room there. The first question that came up, which I think is a good one, is we've talked about affordable housing a bunch of times here. I tend to say that almost by default because of NHC and our focus on affordable housing, but most rental housing is affordable just because it's rental, right? It's serving folks at 80% of area median income or less. Are the opportunities here only for regulated affordable housing participating in a federal program, or is it multifamily generally?
This is Sandy with NASEO. I think from maybe the larger state and market perspective, an energy efficiency project that happens, is kind of the same across the board, whether it's a HUD subsidized housing or a luxury apartment building. I think the key here for state compliance plans is likely just the type of kind of programmatic, the program that it's encased in, whether there is any sort of underwriting or measurement and verification attached, or other methodologies for tracking those savings and avoided emissions. Maybe Lauren has some ideas on the utility perspective there.
No, I think that when we're talking about affordable, we're talking about government subsidized and just naturally occurring affordable as well. Some utilities do have programs that what they would refer to as income eligible that do have certain restrictions, but generally utilities are reaching the broader affordable housing as well as market rate programs. Some of the best practices, I'd say some of the best practices do target low-income housing tax credit properties in coordination with housing finance agencies. I mean, we see that as a best practice, and the extent to which utilities can work with building owners that do have certain stipulations because of government subsidy, that's always a plus. But in general, when we talk about affordable housing, we are talking about the larger naturally occurring housing stock.
Great. Todd or Khalil, do you want to jump in on that, or have we covered it?
This is Todd. I would just add briefly that our mission is affordable housing, but it's not restricted to just the rent-restricted, regulated stock. And the potential study that I mentioned happens to also include naturally occurring affordable housing.
Good, good. A follow-on question to that, is there room to address single-family housing here at all? I mean, our focus in this webinar is very much on the multifamily sector because it's its own special thing. But are there parallel initiatives around single-family that any of you know about?
NASEO is working on a couple of case studies on the link between building energy codes and the Clean Power Plan, as well as residential efficiency programs. We're still at the very early stages of that, so I don't have much to share. But I think from kind of an efficiency perspective, the sets of constraints and challenges in single-family efficiency tends to be, at least as far as I can tell, not as large and significant as in the multifamily sector. So I think, if anything, there are more programs dedicated out there to residential efficiency and potential more processes that can feed into the Clean Power Plan process.
Yeah, this
and
is
I would
Khalil.
just add that.
I would just add to that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Khalil, then Lauren.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Yes, I think the multifamily sector is unique, both in in the mechanisms that are going to be required to to access it with program services, but then also with the the issues that make it difficult. That being said, I think where there's overlap, I think some of the issues, whether it be in low-income housing or affordable housing, whatever your preferred term, in general, issues such as meeting TRC requirements, things such as that. I think that there is overlap, within some of these issues, and so working to improve the accessibility of utility-funded programs for the affordable multifamily sector, can have implications for the for a single-family low-income as well.
And I would just quickly add that, yes, Khalil, I wanted to highlight the overlap as well, and that I think in general we should look to the Clean Power Plan with a lens of equity to see greater investments in low-income housing more broadly, underserved markets more broadly, and in that way there's certainly an overlap. And in general, we can apply that lens to engaging in the planning process at the state level.
And not to put too fine a point on it, it's a great way to get people engaged, right? If work in the energy efficiency side of this also helps low-income communities, it's a way to bring multiple stakeholders to the table in ways that otherwise they might not, and really focus on this issue. So I'm going to attempt to combine several questions into one before we get into the really specific stuff. A lot of folks are asking in a completely logical way, so is there money now or isn't there money now? And if so, and if there isn't money now, what do we do to create that, right? That the very practical, how do we engage and what happens? My sense from this presentation, from our earlier discussions, there isn't actually money yet, but this is about trying to generate state plans that will provide funds. Is that fair? I see Laura nodding. Why don't you go first?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, ACCCA has been involved in working closely with utilities to develop programs. Ratepayer funds exist now. They've essentially always existed, but multifamily as a market has been underserved. Okay. And so we see the Clean Power Plan as just an additional kind of sweetener to investing multifamily efficiency. So kind of an actionable item is for you all is to be engaging with the utilities in your area. If they don't have a multifamily specific program, they can develop one, and advocacy is part of that. And we, ACCCA, are certainly a resource if you're looking to better engage with your utilities. But also housing finance agencies as well could be engaging with utilities to kind of make sure that ratepayer funds are being proportionally delivered to the multifamily market.
Right. Yeah, this is Khalil again. I would just add to that. Again, also, you can go to the Energy Efficiency for All website. We have there, which was just released today, as Todd mentioned earlier, the program design guide, which is just a best practices tool, a tool for utilities in designing programs for multifamily housing. And there are sometimes cases, as Lauren said, where the multifamily portfolio is addressed through a multifamily specific program. But then there are other cases where, it's subsetted under the low-income program, or it's a part of the residential program, or sometimes it's part of the commercial program. Not to get too far into the weeds, but yes, there is money available. Today, collectively, utilities are spending more than $12 billion on energy efficiency programs, and we're expecting, those that resource to increase, to over $15 billion by 2025, 2030. And so, there is currently monies available. Typically, the preferred is for utilities to spend about, 1%, 2% of their total revenue on energy efficiency programs. Not very many utilities meet that mark. But that's usually, what we would like to try to see, them get to in terms of the level of spending for energy efficiency. But yes, there is money available. But sometimes the programs, aren't necessarily up to standard or are just generally inaccessible for the multifamily market.
Got it. No, that's very helpful. Todd, did you want to add anything before we move to the next question?
No, I think they covered that.
Okay, great. So another great question in here, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but trying to get a range here. The study data on savings. The question is, when there are savings on energy, right, you're paying a lower bill, where does that go? Does it go to the owner of the property? Does it go to tenants? Does it go to HUD if HUD is providing rental assistance? Does it go to the lender somehow? Probably not, because it's usually a fixed payment, but depending. Have any of you looked at that effect and how it plays into decisions about making efficiency improvements. I might tap Todd to go first on this just because I know NHT has done some work here.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue. As part of our EEFA project, we are engaging with state housing finance agencies, with HUD to, try to get some of their policies adjusted so that, when there is a utility allowance, for example, and there is an energy efficiency retrofit, that some of that savings can accrue to the tenant, some of that savings can accrue to the owner. Maybe if some of the savings has to go to HUD, well, maybe not all of it. Maybe that there's a process to share that savings. But I will say that there are other benefits beyond just the utility savings, the cost savings from energy efficiency. And I think it was, touched on before, but, creating a healthier, more comfortable living environment, that's also a benefit that automatically, that is enjoyed by the residents.
That's an excellent point. And I will say also that the health impacts of investments in energy efficiency and greener properties are substantial. We haven't gotten into any of that today, but it is a frequent topic at Green Affordable Housing Coalition meetings. So I would encourage you to connect into that if you're interested in the health side of this, because we haven't explored it. It's very important, just a little beyond the scope of today. I'm curious, for any of you, one of the questioners asked for an example, right? What's an incentive that an owner could use and that the utility company that would provide that would fit into this, just as concrete as possible to give people something to attach to? Lauren's going to do this one. All right.
Great. Well, I mean, we talk kind of make an artificial division between programs and incentives that utilities may offer building owners. One could be no-cost direct install. Light bulbs would probably be the most common example of that. But we really advocate for more comprehensive programs so that address whole building systems, HVAC systems, water pumps, and so on. More of kind of what we may refer to as whole building or building envelope. And that you could, and the really strong programs which we like to see work very closely with the building owners in designing the plan for retrofits, the scope of work, applying all rebates and incentives that the building owner may be eligible for, and then working through both implementation and then evaluation of the savings as well. And I'd also add, especially when we're talking about affordable multifamily, upfront costs is a particular challenge there. And really strong utility programs, in addition to buying down project costs with rebates and incentives, may work to buy down these costs up front. In some cases, work with a housing finance agency to provide low-cost financing, or in addition to options of low-cost financing, can implement a on-bill repayment program where then tenants are paying for a small portion of this on utility bills, or again, it depends on who's actually paying the utility bills, but the savings then, as both the bill and the savings stay with the utility payer, right? The unit itself, whether, again, it might not be the unit, but it may be the building as a whole. So that's generally how rebates and incentives work, and then documented those savings is the next step so that they can be credited in the plans.
I think one really interesting model, just to tack on to Lauren's remarks, is the idea of this one-stop shop that helps property owners or folks interested in installing efficiency projects navigate the somewhat complex maze of utility and state incentives that are out there and the different types of financing that they might be able to tap into. So those folks tend to be pretty good resources there too.
Excellent. On this question, Khalil or Todd, do you want to chime in?
No, I think that covers it pretty well.
Yeah, I think I agree.
Okay, good. Then let's do this. In just a couple minutes, we're going to switch over to talk about next steps, and Rebecca's going to handle that. But I want to let each of you have kind of a closing thought. We haven't hit all the questions. We tried to get as many as we could, but I think the next steps will be a useful way to help keep people plugged in. So we'll start in the room here with Lauren and then Sandy, and then go to Khalil and Todd.
Well, I would just add that we covered a lot of material today, which I suspect some of it might be new. So feel free to rely on us as a resource. We do offer a host of reports, but even more than that, feel free to send us an email, whether it's connecting with utilities or plugging in to the correct state-level agencies. We're happy to guide you along that process, all of us on the panel. So feel free to reach out to us as a resource.
This is Sandy at NASEO. I think we're still beginning to think through all the linkages here. So hearing from you all on feedback or areas of interest where you really feel like your community or your organization can plug into Clean Power Plan discussions. I think the time is right to raise innovative ideas, and the group here and our partners can all help you figure out how to move forward, and as Lauren said, connect with the right state agencies.
Khalil, Todd, thoughts to share?
Yeah, this is Todd. I'll just say something that EEFA, the Energy Efficiency for All project, is working on is building kind of a national network of both affordable housing and energy efficiency stakeholders that are interested in really addressing this multifamily affordable housing challenge. So I would encourage folks who want to stay involved to think about joining the Network for Water, Energy, and Health in Affordable Buildings. That's sort of our, that's what we call our national network. And it's a useful place to exchange ideas and learn from others about the solutions for improving energy efficiency in multifamily affordable housing. And folks can actually get to that network through the EEFA website, energyefficiencyforall.org.
Khalil, any comments?
My turn? Yeah. I would just, first, thank everyone, who was able to participate and listen to us today. This is a very, very important issue. I think this is, this work is really key in terms of how we actually extend the benefits of the Clean Power Plan, to low-income communities. And so I would just urge everyone, to stay in touch with us. That there are going to be more, events, webinars, and other means of engaging this work both nationally, but then also, once we move into the state implementation plan processes, in specific states. So just keep your eyes open and just stay abreast, and please feel free to reach out to us, with any questions or any ideas. But yeah, that we just look forward to continuing this work throughout the summer and into the SIP process.
Great. Thanks for those comments. That's really great feedback. So I will dive into the next steps, which will really be going back to each speaker for your thoughts, because we've talked about the need to engage early, the need to advocate for multifamily affordable housing at the state and local level as we implement the Clean Power Plan. But that's kind of very general and a little vague. So for folks who are really interested in this and want to engage, maybe some concrete things they can do now, or at least plan on, ways they can engage with utilities, their state energy offices, things like that. If you have specific kind of steps that affordable housing stakeholders can take now, I think that would be really helpful for folks, or at least over the next couple of months. So I'm going to start with Todd.
I'm sorry?
And put you on the spot.
I know. I wish I had waited, and I could have given the network response now. But I do think that one way is to just to stay engaged, to learn. as this process unfolds, and the network that I mentioned is a great opportunity to do that. So sorry if I don't have anything new and exciting to say, but I think that's a great first step for folks to really get informed about what's going on.
Todd, can you give us the full name of the network and the web address again, just in case folks missed it?
Yeah, sure. So the name of the network is it's NEWHAB, Network for Energy, Water, Affordable. Wait. Network for Energy, Water, and Health and Affordable Buildings. Sorry, NEWHAB. And you can learn more about it if you visit the Energy Efficiency for All website, and the address for Energy Efficiency for All is energyefficiencyforall.org.
And that's also included in the slides that will go to all the registered webinar participants afterwards. Great.
I can take a turn. This is Sandy again. I think a key first step is, now that you do have this overview and sense of all the different stakeholders that are involved, I would actually suggest maybe taking a step inward and looking at the projects that you have, determining whether energy efficiency is being appropriately tapped in the buildings that you're involved in. Take a look at how some of those projects work, what processes are in place, what data you can share, and really start to develop a case that can be presented to planners.
And I would add to that, I think that's a great example, Sandy, and remind everyone that there's power in numbers. So I think that it might be a good time to start engaging with your local networks, whatever that may be, and maybe meet with the State Department of the Environment, air regulator offices, and other planning agencies that you know will be involved in this plan, and start talking about opportunities for multifamily and affordable housing under the Clean Power Plan. So I think it's also time to start engaging at the local level, at the grassroots level, for sure.
And Khalil, any thoughts you want to add to that point on next steps?
No, I mean, well, yeah, I think it's mostly covered. I think, again, first step is, if you have not already tried to, if you're, a property owner or manager or developer, if you haven't tried to access any energy efficiency programs through, your local utility, reach out to them and figure out exactly, what is on offer, and ask about, how can they work with you to, to better, enhance those programs. I think, talking to, getting together, with local advocates, because really a lot of the action is going to happen, at the state level once the final rule, is actually released. And so working through, local coalitions there, reaching out to us, we can definitely, help, with any, in any way that we can, but I think that's definitely a start. And I would just, second, what everyone else has already said.
Great.
And then this is Ethan. I want to first thank all of our panelists for all of the great information, and then really second their call for engagement here. I mean, you've heard a bunch of great suggestions for doing it, and some of that starts now, right? Building the case, collecting the information using programs that have already been done, starting your own energy efficiency activities, and measuring the results so you can present those in a convincing way to folks making decisions. Plugging into the coalitions in your state that will be active on this issue when the plan comes out, and then watch for that plan, watch for the community engagement process that is going to be required, so that you already know some of the folks you'll be talking to, you have materials ready to present to make that public case for including multifamily housing, affordable housing, as one of the ways that states can fulfill their plan objectives. So it's start now, get ready to do a lot, and then when those plans really hit, that's when you engage. You've heard a lot of great federal level networks that you can plug into to get more information, learn about it. I encourage you to take advantage of all of those, and to reach out to us afterwards in response to the follow-up email if you want. We can help connect you with more resources. With that, again, big thanks to all the folks who put in a lot of work on this. Look for more to come, plug in at your state level, and let's see what we can do to advance both energy efficiency and affordable housing at the same time.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and stay tuned for the follow-up email with all the resources and the link to the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.